Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello, and welcome to the Castle Dracula podcast. On this podcast, we talk about horror movies, vampire movies, and all-around awesomeness. And this week, we continue our Evil Baby retrospective with a look at The Omen, the one and only from 1976, starring Gregory Peck and Lee Remick. Bear in mind that if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have, so warning, spoilers ahead. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the brand new Alex Van Helsing adventure, Triumph of Death, in hardback and ebook form from HarperCollins, so look for it at Amazon or your local store. With me, as always, are Drew Edwards, the creator of the long-running horror webcomic Halloween Man, which you can find at halloweenman.com. Say hello, Drew.
Howdy.
You never know what you're going to say until I actually say your name. Is that right?
I make it up as I go along. That's how I pretty much do everything in my life.
I was actually busy trying to cue up music when I started talking, and that was why the weird hesitation, as though somebody had walked into my studio and threatened me. Tony Salvaggio, creator of Psychom Book 3, coming this August. That's this month, if you're listening in August. From Right Stuff and Tokyopop. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. With color commentary from the one and only attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay. The Omen. We're talking about The Omen. I think this is one of the most prestigious, and I mean in the meaning of like a prestige movie. The Omen. This is one of the best, like, Class A prestige horror films that we've ever done. Now, The Omen is a story about a U.S. dignitary, Gregory Peck, who, when his newborn son dies at birth in Rome on the 6th of June at 6 a.m., get it, agrees to take in a replacement boy, unbeknownst to his wife, Lee Remick, a changeling child named Damien who seems to invite catastrophe at every turn. People commit suicide, an evil governess with a vicious Rottweiler comes to watch him, and soon Peck is faced with the reality that his son is actually the son of Satan, whose number is 666. And Peck investigates with the help of a grim and resourceful photojournalist, going from London to Rome to Israel, but in the end, only Peck makes it home alive. And before Gregory Peck can kill Damien and save the world, he is shot to death by police who thinks he's murdering his own son. And we end with a shot of Damien, truly evil, and about to be adopted, apparently, by the President of the United States. That is the best that I could sum up The Omen in what probably was about 45 seconds, so I didn't time it. See, I'm experimenting with the nature of synopses. So that's The Omen. This is a beautiful movie. I want to get, and you can tell I'm biased. All right, first impressions. We'll go Tony, Drew, Julia, and then me.
You always put me last before you.
Yeah,
do you want to go first?
Ladies first.
Do you want to go first? Do you want to do that? We can do that.
I'm just observing.
I want to hear. I really like after watching this movie twice, once the '76 version and once the 2006 version. I want to hear a mom's perspective on this crazy movie.
Yeah, Julia. Yes, in fact, give us our first impression, and if you could, please explain The Omen vis-a-vis the women's movement and
vis-a-vis representing mothers everywhere.
Every time I ask you a question,
funny.
I want to work the word vis-a-vis into it. So, okay, yes. First impressions. And then we'll get back to you, I promise.
So you're talking to me?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't clear if we're still in Tony, Drew, Julia.
No, that was your one chance.
All right.
It's gone. Go ahead.
Yes, okay. Well, it wasn't as scary as I remember it being, but yes, as a mom, it is definitely freaky to think about, like if your child, and it helps that she decides that it can possibly be my child because it's evil. I think that's probably a pretty normal reaction. It's like, this kid is too evil to be my kid. Obviously, it's not my kid. But yeah, I think as a parent, you kind of do go, at what point does your child get evil enough that you're like, I don't want this kid anymore. I don't want it in my life. But actually, the reaction I had was more about the father, and I decided that it was kind of an Isaac and Abraham story where, at what point is the message from God that you need to kill your son strong enough that you just can't ignore it anymore? And I thought that was kind of an interesting way to look at it. I don't know if I thought of that before.
That is. I really want to get back to that, but I've never heard anybody talk about Abraham and Isaac from the perspective of, how does our understanding of the story change if we know that Isaac is actually an evil creature that needs to be sacrificed,
well,
and not just a random, right, and not just a random, I don't know, test of Abraham's will. All right, Tony, first impressions, The Omen.
It's just awesome. Like, I hadn't seen it it had been a little while. I can't remember the last time I saw it, but it wasn't that long ago. But I'd forgotten a bunch of the really cool bits, and I think I don't know if I had the novelization or if someone had it, but I do remember the thing I remember the most about reading it is also in the middle it had like all the pictures, and one of the pictures was the guy's head getting chopped off, which I was like, it's in black and white, but it's kind of crazy that that's what. Hey, and by the way, as many times as you want to, you can flip back to this guy's head getting cut off if you want to. But, such a random. But, I really like it. Like I said, if that was in there, I must have read it, like, several times as well. It's just an awesome movie.
It'd be neat if it were a Whitman-style flip book where you'd flip the pages really quickly and the little guy would get his head cut off by the sheet of glass.
It said in the trivia, it said that
here's the hanging part, and that's a flip book. Just
in the trivia, it says that Richard Donner filmed that scene so that it would take so long that people would close their eyes when the beheading happens, but then by the time they opened their eyes, they would still see the head floating through the air.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's just really like it's different actually than when I remembered. I mean, there's lots of just awesome bits. It holds up way better. There's a reason why this one's a classic, and the 2006 one will never really be a classic. Even though there's some interesting things in the 2006 one, since I watched them both, I was like, yeah, now I know why this was.
Well, when we go through it, I want you to lay on us the changes, or you can sprinkle them in. Both are. So, Monsieur Drew, what do you think? First impressions of The Omen.
Well, me and this movie go back. As I was saying before we got started, this is actually my dad's favorite horror movie, and I remember, my dad's a pretty hard-nosed and stoic kind of guy, and but I remember, when I was a kid and the first time I saw this, my dad just kind of on a whim rented it at the video store, and he literally came through the door singing he was trying to sing the theme music, but he was actually just saying The Omen over and over again, like The Omen, The Omen. He was just positively giddy about sharing this movie, and it's a great movie. I hadn't seen it in about a decade, and so it was almost like watching it, not completely new, but like watching it, not remembering things, but having that combination of nostalgic feelings for it. And also this is an incredibly nerd-friendly movie. I mean, not only do you have Richard Donner, the director of Superman and the producer of the X-Men films, you have, Gregory Peck, screen icon, David Warner,
he produced the X-Men film?
One of the all-time great horror movie stock actors, and then Patrick Troughton, the second Doctor Who. I mean, this is good stuff here.
Wow. Yeah. No, it is. It has so much going for it. All right, okay, my first impressions, and then I want to get, first of all, to how the heck did you guys watch this movie? So, okay, I started out by saying this is a prestige picture, and it really is. This movie was made by 20th Century Fox. I don't have a great deal about, why, in what context this was made, other than that it's coming sort of on the heels of the big Exorcist explosion and this big kind of, somebody called it cathsploitation, where all of a sudden there were a lot of these movies, both schlocky B pictures and big A pictures that were, playing off of big Catholic concepts of priests and Satan and exorcisms and all of that. But this is an original Hollywood piece, and it is gorgeous. I mean, there's so many great sets, and you know, they fly all around the world, and it's got Gregory freaking Peck. You know, it is, when you consider that this is a plot really that in a sense could have been a William Castle movie, and except for that it's trussed up to look beautiful, and it's exciting. So I was just so impressed with how good it was, how well made it is, how much it feels kind of like a mystery adventure as much as it does like a horror movie. I mean, there are horrible things about it, but it has a real feel of kind of a dark mystery movie, and you know, so I was really impressed. I don't think I had ever watched The Omen all the way through, or if I had, it had been a really long time. So I'm glad we're talking about it, and in fact, this is the second in our Evil Baby retrospective, so next week we might very well do Omen 2 because we've all had such a good time. But I just want to ask, how in the world did you guys see this? Let me tell you really quickly that I looked high and low without actually getting the DVD, because to me, if something can't be streamed, it practically doesn't exist anymore. I'm happy to rent movies, happy to pay for movies streaming, and so I do that all the time. But if I don't have the DVD on my shelf, you know, I may not have time to order it by the time a show comes around. So I expect stuff to be streamable, and I part with pesos in order to stream movies, and this movie was not available. Just nowhere. It's not on iTunes. It wasn't on Amazon. It wasn't, you know, the only place I found it is there was a bootleg version on YouTube. So my attempt to stream The Omen failed, and also led me to commit, I guess, what must be a felony at this point. And
plausible deniability.
But yeah, supposedly in my dream, that didn't really happen.
Yes, exactly. It was a nightmare of terrible watching.
But I mean, that's crazy, isn't it? That 20th Century Fox, you know, owns this movie. They put out DVDs for it. They could be making money, and instead, what they're doing is allowing people to post it for free on YouTube. When I would have paid
either, because
yeah.
This is, I don't know why it's so hard to find it. Like I went to, you know, I tried to get it on Netflix, and I could have gotten it on Netflix. I could have gotten it mailed to me, but it wouldn't have gotten. I wouldn't have received it in time. I went to Vulcan Video, which as I said before, that we actually started the podcast, is arguably one of the best video stores in the country, if not the world.
Yeah.
And they had the remake. They had all of the sequels. They had a documentary about
this. Is Vulcan you're talking about again?
This is Vulcan Video, and
yes.
They did not have the original. I went to a Blockbuster Video, and all they had the sequels. They had the remake. Did not have the original. At that point, I asked my parents to see if they could find it. They couldn't find it, and I ended up having
that's a real shock to me, because I mean, Vulcan. I decided I wanted to live in Austin because of Vulcan Video.
Vulcan Video is amazing normally,
yeah.
And
they had Black Sunday. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
A company has Black Sunday, but somehow they don't have The Omen, which, although in the chat room they're debating which is more awesome, Vulcan Video and I Love Video. But let me tell you, before there was I Love Video, there was only Vulcan, and Vulcan is awesome. But yes, I Love Video is.
I live long and prosper with Vulcan, but Vulcan, yeah. but I Love Video is also very impressive. I'm not going to say it's not, but
so
I had to buy it. I had to buy this movie. I had to go to a used video store, and I ended up even having to buy it twice because the first disc I got was chipped.
Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible. So you got home, you popped in The Omen, and it was chipped. I'm so sorry.
It was chipped.
Yeah.
It was the Omen.
Right.
Maybe it was the curse of The Omen. Let me tell you that that this movie really doesn't. I joked to Jason that maybe it was cursed because all the actors that were in it have died since. But actually, apparently it was cursed. It says in the IMDb trivia, it says, having changed its title from The Antichrist to The Birthmark, the film seemed to fall victim to a sinister curse. Star Gregory Peck and screenwriter David Seltzer took separate planes to the UK, yet both planes were struck by lightning. While producer Harvey Bernhard was in Rome, lightning just missed him. Rottweilers hired for the film attacked their trainers. A hotel at which director Richard Donner was staying got bombed by the IRA. He was also struck by a car. After Peck canceled another flight to Israel, the plane he would have chartered crashed, killing all on board. On day one of the shoot, several principal members of the crew survived a head-on car crash. The jinx appeared to persist well into post-production when special effects artist John Richardson was injured and his girlfriend beheaded in an accident on the set of A Bridge Too Far. So I'm like, good Lord, that's not...
Well, okay, fair enough, although that is a lot of stuff, but the fact that everybody in this movie is dead now, I think owes a lot to the fact that the movie
the fact that they're
about 40 years old. But that does sound like a troubled shoot. Although I've heard of worse. It's at least look at Apocalypse Now, and there was no reason for that.
But that's an evil movie too. That's the thing. It's like I
think the reason this movie is impossible to find is that 20th Century Fox is deliberately wanting you to get the new one with Liev Schreiber, and so therefore, they've not made this one available. I think that's all it is, because
I think they're burying the original in favor.
They're burying the original. We talked about how
the remake is now old enough.
The
remake is now old enough that doesn't really even make sense anymore, because the remake that was 2006. Because it was like, we're releasing it on 666. And it's...
because I can get a copy of Dan Curtis's Dracula starring Jack Palance on various DVDs. There's no reason why this should be the thing that I can't get on iTunes. And Time Warner even takes their most obscure crap and makes it available on streaming and print on demand. All you need to do is to want to part with money. Tony, how did you see it? What did you do? Did you rent it, or
I paid my penance and rented accidentally, mind you. I wasn't paying enough attention to the new one, and then was like, oh, that was dumb. And then I looked around, and there's hardly any good video stores up north anymore, so I had to find it. Some gracious soul, maybe the devil, posted it on YouTube.
It's because you have long hair.
See, the devil, he did it. I'm going to blame the devil and say that he is the one doing this. So, there you go.
Yeah.
But I paid my money. I would have rented it. There's no video stores here. All the Blockbusters closed down. I would have done that, but I can't.
I gladly
Well, I can tell you, man, Blockbuster is a bust. You wouldn't have been able to find it.
Again, the devil.
Why can't we have print-on-demand DVDs? That's another good question. If this movie is available on DVD, how come you can't go to a version of the Red Box and say, I want the Omen, and it just burns you one and then pops it out?
Keep that. Maybe
you may have just invented something that we'll end up having in like a couple of years, because
but we won't need it because, again, we've got streaming. Although to your point,
if
you don't want to have...
Okay, this is could be a whole episode. I like owning things. I guess I'm old-fashioned.
No, fair enough. And we should get back to the Omen. Actually, we should get back to this. Okay, so as we said, this is a beautiful-looking movie that is impossible to find. So if you're listening and you haven't seen The Omen recently, I guess you can rush to the YouTube right now and watch it. And it displayed very well on my Samsung Blu-ray player, in my imagination, when this didn't actually happen. And so that's your opportunity, at least this week. Okay, so what do we want to talk about first? One thing for sure, I want to start with the music. I think the thing that people remember the most about The Omen, because it's not the personality of the child, because everything is about him, but he actually does not necessarily feature all that heavily. But that music, all the way through, there's this song called Ave Satani, Hail Satan, and by Jerry Goldsmith. And it is this beautiful thing where the choir is going, Ave, and they're singing a satanic hymn. And that thing won an Oscar. And what has always made me just amazed is that in 1976, or at least for the 1976 Oscars, that meant that because it was nominated, you had a choir up on the stage, prime time, the Oscars, singing the most famous hymn to Satan ever written, and and then it won. And that it's so funny because I'm not particularly religious, but I got to say that if I were an evangelical in that time, this is one of those things that would lead me to believe that the earth, that the country is just completely turned against me. that you've got this honest-to-goodness satanic hymn being sung completely without irony, as far as I can work out. It's just a pretty song.
Richard Donner, apparently a lot of Christians were very behind this movie. That was something that I saw on the supplemental on the DVD. They had
because he's a bad guy.
Richard Donner even got some sort of honorary thing from a school of theology.
No kidding.
Yeah, because the devil's bad, and we all want everybody to know that.
Right. It's not the heroic Satanists that Tony was referencing that also didn't show up in Rosemary's Baby either. It's the bad kind of Satanists who are astonishingly good at conspiracies. I mean, in this movie, this is another one of those movies where Satan Incorporated is powerful and vast, and they can do all kinds of crazy stuff, and they can switch babies, and they can, they know in advance.
Well, apparently they've infiltrated the Catholic Church.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That Tony, you were going to say something. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I thought that was interesting too, because if you at the beginning, until you kind of find that out, you're like, wow, man, how'd the Vatican mess that one up? Like, here's a priest guy who's giving him a baby, and like, oops, it's devil baby. Like, until you find out like what's going on, you're like, whoa, I don't know.
It sounds very folkloric, doesn't it? When you open up, you've got the somber Gregory Peck going to the hospital because his wife is having a baby, which is so counter to the way that most people experience that today. By the way, generally, you happen to already be there, unless maybe he was rushing in from the airport. Who knows? He gets to the airport, and his wife, who we don't meet yet, is unconscious because, as Julia informs me, the typical way of having a baby at this point was they apparently knock you out and then remove the baby like some sort of cyst.
Yeah, I mentioned that last week too. Yeah.
Right. And then you wake up and there is a baby. And we hit this with Rosemary's Baby.
In civilized quote unquote society, that's how they did it.
Right.
I'm sure there were still women in fields having babies by squatting, but
yeah. Well, yeah, presumably the human race did actually manage to reproduce for eons before we started just knocking people out. But nevertheless, Lee Remick is out and not on screen yet. And a mysterious priest comes to Gregory Peck and says, "Hey, I can hook you up with a baby." And Gregory Peck goes,
suddenly she's teaching song or something.
You make it sound like he's got them in a coat. Baby, and he's like, "What his coat? I got them all."
Yeah,
hysterical visual.
You kind of see him like looking around, like back and forth, see if anybody's coming.
A briefcase, like in New York. I got one too. That's another briefcase.
That's funny. You open the briefcase and it lights up, like in Pulp Fiction.
Sure. Yeah, this baby is primo.
Baby. Primo baby.
Where's the mom? Oh, the mother died exactly the same time that your baby was born. Don't be freaked out by the many coincidences. Just go with it. Okay.
Alexa 3 L's and baby with BAYBEIE.
So Gregory Peck, who we all know to be all wise and all knowing because we watched To Kill a Mockingbird, Gregory Peck thinks about it for like 30 seconds and he's like, okay, give me the replacement baby.
Yeah, there's no downside here.
Right. So there we go. He takes him in, and Gregory Peck is apparently the best liar in the world because he just walks in with the baby and goes, "Here, honey, baby," and we go for it. And this is where we meet Lee Remick.
He didn't have to lie. All he had to do was hand her the baby.
Yeah, indeed.
She's not what
indeed.
she's not going to go. Oh, this is my baby. Is this the one I give birth to?
Why are you walking in the room with a baby?
Why are you giving me milk, baby?
Yeah. So we basically the baby. I'm trying to think. It seems very quickly after that we cut to he gets the job as.
Well, no, that's what I said. So he hands the baby to Lee Remick, and the baby cries. And I told Jason at that point. I said, the baby's crying. You're not my father. Satan is my father.
You're not my real dad. It'll be really easy to pull that one later on. You're not my real dad. My real dad has horns, and it's in hell. And lets me drive my car however I want, anytime.
You're not my real dad. I love the idea of like a sullen, mean Damien. Yeah, at like 16, and maybe that's what Omen 2 is like.
It is. He's a total jerk. That guy.
Mm-hmm.
As you can well imagine. Yes, but you're right. So then the next scene, now the baby's like toddler. Well, and then they have the.
They go to England because he becomes the ambassador to England.
Right.
So this is, by the way, the choice to make this into like a really good-looking prestige movie, and you've got Gregory Peck as an ambassador and a dignitary, means that all the sets are gorgeous and all the houses are giant and all the cars are wonderful and all the clothes are fantastic. The priest apparently was looking for somebody good to give this baby to because it could have gone another way. He could have given the baby to like a humble Baptist preacher from Alabama or something, but no, he gives the baby to this guy who's going to be driving a lot of estate cars and stuff like that.
Well, but that's what we find out later, right? Like that's the whole plot. Is the idea?
Yeah, they've got him pegged.
Injected into politics.
Yes, no, that's absolutely right. So
I thought the little photo montage was really sweet when they advance him from toddler to 5.
That was beautiful.
That's one thing that's missing actually from the new one. The new one is super cold.
This is like it's like a really normal childhood for him until he turns 5.
Yeah, even to the one of the things I wrote down was the part where he's missing and they go to find him, right? Which is a scary part. It doesn't even end up being scary demon thing. It's just a scary thing for parents.
Right.
In the new one, it's just Julia Stiles.
And every parent has that moment of terror when they don't see their kid. Yeah.
Leif Schreiber isn't around. And by the way, he's a great actor, but he is not Gregory Peck.
Come on. I mean, Gregory Peck.
Who is Gregory Peck? I mean, really, Jason and I were talking about that. Like, who is the Gregory Peck of this era? The only person that can come close in my mind was George Clooney.
George Clooney is more of a Cary Grant.
Yeah, I would go with that. I think I agree with Drew.
Who would you say is the Gregory Peck?
I don't think we have one.
I don't know.
Because you need somebody who has reasonably good looks, although Gregory Peck, always seemed a little older than matinee idolish, but you need somebody who's good looking and handsome, but also tall, and also have that tremendous gravitas. And it's hard to figure out who that is because you almost have to live in a world with no irony at all to have the kind of gravity that
I think we're all too smart. I think the majority of today's Hollywood actors, and just as a societal thing in general, I mean, there's just been this massive cultural move towards general smarminess, and I think that keeps us from having our own Gregory Peck, and unfortunately.
Say more things about this. What do you mean by smarminess? Do you mean
we're a very snide. I feel like people are very snide these days. It's just that everybody's so ironic and
right.
I don't know, stuck on themselves. And
right.
Gregory
If you gave Gregory Peck an ironic line where he quoted a TV commercial about something that's going on in the house, that's something that even Kevin Costner could probably pull off. It just wouldn't work. Gregory Peck doesn't do sarcasm. He doesn't do irony. He doesn't do eye rolling. He barely does jokes.
you needed Gregory Peck though because he seems so inherently decent. Then at the end of this movie when he is literally pulling a child down down a church.
Right. It has to be a total conversion. It's like we talked about with Rosemary's Baby, how the conversion from her being such a good, wholesome kind of Catholic girl was important. I think the same thing here. He's such a decent, straight-laced guy, and the only bad thing he's ever done was the baby trade, and now he's got to do that. It just has to be a total conversion from good to good to corrupt or whatever it is, whatever you.
Well, he's not even really corrupt. He's just trying to right this wrong he's done.
Yeah, exactly.
And he even the one bad thing he did, he was just trying to spare his wife. Really,
that's right.
I mean, this is a good guy, and I think if they had a different actor, a lot about this movie wouldn't have worked because somebody's trading a baby. That's kind of shady. Like Gregory Peck makes you go, oh, he just doesn't want his wife to be sad. And at the end of the movie, he's again pulling this kid. He's pulling this kid. This kid is fighting him tooth and nail. You kind of root for him because he's Gregory Peck and he's trying to save the world.
No, you're absolutely right. It is perfect because to me, Gregory Peck, I think everybody knows Gregory Peck forever as the ultimate father, the ultimate trustworthy guy. So if Gregory Peck is sold that this kid is the son of Satan, needs to be stabbed, we're there with him. We're okay with it because Gregory Peck said so. So also in this cast we have Lee Remick, who her actual background is quite middle class, but she seems so blue blood. I mean, when I looked at her, I was like, this woman is like, I was getting, like Blythe Danner and Joyous said, Gwyneth Paltrow, of course, Blythe Danner's daughter. There's just something so perfectly upper crust about Lee Remick, and she seems wonderful. And I don't really get much more out of her in here. I believe her in the role that she's in. I think the most disturbing thing about her role is that she has to decide that there's something wrong with her kid, which has got to be an insane thing to decide. It's crazy to suddenly decide.
I think they could have done more with that part of the story because it kind of is overnight. I mean, it's like really where she's just suddenly. It's after the trip to the safari when all the animals start freaking out, and like they see. Oh, by the way they got that, because Jason, you asked about I wonder how they did that. The way they got the baboons to attack the car.
So what happens? They go on a safari. They're driving.
Yeah, they go on the safari, and all the animals start flipping out around the car, and the giraffes run away. But then the baboons, although they start to get scared, nervous, they actually attack the car after a while. And it's because the way they achieved that was because they took the leader of the baboons and they took him away and put him in the car, I guess. And so then the car, they started attacking the car because they were taking the leader away. And this is the Remick's terror as the baboons attacked the car was real.
Oh yeah!
Wow.
That little bit to me always is the scariest part of the movie because baboons are creepy.
Well,
yeah, they're scary and they can tear you limb from limb. So that's pretty amazing.
But it's then, that's when she decides that the kid must be evil, and it's kind of like I feel like there should have been more about the kid himself because I felt like for her the evidence was just that something weird was going on around the child, but I would almost feel protective of the child. I would almost feel like I would think that it would be like, what's going on? What is after my kid? As opposed to there's something wrong with my kid and he's evil and I'm having these terrible thoughts. I just think we never saw a scene where she got a message about that. I feel like she should have gotten some kind of message or a dream.
The nanny did hang herself while proclaiming
herself. But I'm saying, again, it still is not anything about the child himself, as rather it's stuff around.
It's all for you, Damien.
Yes. No, it's true.
All for you.
No, I mean,
the
weird
crap goes on.
Does not seem to react in an evil way. You know what I mean? He doesn't. It's not like he laughs maniacally or he goes, applause or whatever.
he's in hiding. You know,
yeah.
he's not.
That's what I'm
he's
saying.
not
So
showing
it doesn't
his
make
hand.
sense that she should have that reaction of evil just because everyone else is reacting to the child. Like the child himself has not exhibited behaviors that should make her alarmed about the child. Rather, I feel like she should be more protective of the child and thinking, what?
Well,
but
all it
like
would take would be a scene or
a
two of the child doing something particularly wrong, like
I see it's the opposite, actually. By the way,
go ahead.
I see it as she feels it, like because she's the mom.
Yeah.
She knows instinctively there's something wrong.
Well, that she's not the mom. She says she knows that she's not the mom. Like the psychiatrist says that he says that she's not. Yeah.
She's a mother.
Right.
And what she's feeling means, like, she doesn't feel that protection. That's part of the problem. She's like, I need to see a psychiatrist.
Yes.
Like, she's torn up about it. But once she, like, in her heart of heart, she knows that this isn't right. And that's why she's not like, I need to protect this kid. It's because she, deep down inside, she's discovered, she doesn't want to admit it. I mean, she gets thrown off a balcony.
Yes.
Like, and, you know, it's still like, well, you know, she doesn't know. I mean, she's in the hospital and stuff, but she doesn't quite know what to do. I mean, she doesn't even want to really run away.
Right. No, that's absolutely right.
After being pushed, like, she sees him, hey, help me. And he's like, whatever. And so,
right, but that's after. That's not even talking about then. I'm talking about before. Because what we have is we have two pieces, like you said. We have the nanny. The first thing we see when he's 5 years old, his 5-year-old birthday, is his nanny climbs up on top of the house and yells, Damien, Damien, look at me, Damien, and then smiling a happy smile, proceeds to jump off with a noose around her neck and hangs herself and crashes through a window. And so everyone, like, you know, kind of just people seem to be kind of almost gleefully staring at this sight. It was kind of strange. But anyway, but the little boy, you know, she just hugs him, and that's that piece. And then you have, oh, by the way, let me interject here, that the new governess shows up a la Mary Poppins and just kind of magically convinces everyone that it's okay that she's there, even though neither of them has hired her.
Yes.
and that they no knowledge of her except for these papers that she's handing them. So
and she's fantastic. And the movie is not a true mystery because the movie lets us know, maybe because they know that we're going to have seen posters and everything, that the kid is the kid of Satan. So the movie lets us know right away that, you know, Satan has sent his emissary to protect the little boy, and it's this freaking crazy Irish governess
Mary
that
Poppins
somehow, right, that somehow they cannot fire. I don't quite understand how. I mean, clearly there's a spell on them, like something out of Joss Whedon.
Like they interjected a kid into politics, and this cabal has somehow, you know. Well, here's her official papers. Well, why wouldn't? I mean, we're you know, diplomats. Nobody could get into our house if they didn't check it out. You know what I mean? It's one of those things.
Exactly.
If you walk into, you know, if you walk backstage and you have the right look at a concert, you can probably get that far.
I agree with you completely. Yeah.
Now, when the dog comes into play, that's about the time I really think it's time for Gregory Peck to regulate. Like, no, I said the dog is gone. You get the hell out of here, take the dog, that's it.
Well, and I really enjoy that Lee Remick doesn't really take much of her crap anyway, until things start getting out of control and they frankly need somebody to watch the kid while they run around having their own emergencies. Because there's the point where they're like, hey, we're going to the wedding, get the kid ready, and we're going to go. And the governor says, well, I don't know if that's such a good idea now. And they're like,
well, and you're right, and that would contribute to actually, I forgot about that scene. That contributes to the mom's feeling that this kid is evil because the kid attacks her when they approach the church and starts screaming and calling. And that's another little trivia thing I read is that the way they got that scene is that I shouldn't say the scene. The kid himself. They audition kids by having them attack Richard Donner. And, like, Richard Donner said that kid is the one who, like, started clawing at his face and, like, kneed him in the groin and stuff. And he's like, okay, fine, you're hired. And you send him off to get his hair dyed black.
Oh, my.
Anyway, but that scene, that would definitely put a little bit of a, you know, like,
oh, no,
an
but before that,
feeling in your
I was just saying, look, if your governess just is, you're saying, hey, you know, please get Damien into his suit and take him to the car, please. And the governess is like, well, I don't even think you should go out there to a church. Like, you know what? When I actually want to hire an advisor, I will hire an advisor. But for now, please go dress the child and bring them around to the car. I love that Lee Remick is not going to take any of this woman's crap about whether she thinks. I mean, who is this child's mom? Basically, well, setting aside that it's that freaking dog.
Right. It's a jackal. Yeah.
But I thought that was really, really cool. I admired that the movie doesn't forget that the governess is, really, really taking some chances by talking back that much.
Well, she's not really hiding very well anyway. Her name is Mrs. Belloc, and that's those are the hand. That means handmaiden of Satan. She's yes, it does. Like she's kind of hiding in plain sight. She's got kind of a creepy Norman Bates's Irish cousin thing going on. So
and there's a lot of great Irish because there's somebody else that we need to mention, which is outside of the Rottweiler, who is fantastic. There's a lot of great Rottweilers in this movie, but Patrick Troughton is in here, and I think you mentioned it, right? That this is the second Doctor, and he was such a goofy doctor. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just saying yes, he was the second Doctor.
Yeah, I mean, and he's a goofy doctor. He was kind of, I remember him being an arrogant, because I watched a fair amount of this in the 80s, but he was the Doctor in the late 60s, and I remember him being kind of an impatient and arrogant Doctor. But here, he's much skinnier than he was when he was the Doctor, and he's this super serious Irish priest, and I really like him because he's the one. He's also kind of Basil Exposition because he's the one who can come on and move the plot forward by speaking prophecies and telling Gregory Peck to look out for stuff. And he's
interesting to me because he's also a reformed devil worshipper.
Yes. No, that was remarkable to me. That he's supposed to have been somehow been involved in devil worship for a long time, but now he's become a Catholic priest. And we talked during Rosemary's Baby about how at least in the Hollywood universe of Catholics and Satanists, these are like opposing counsel in
he
some
has
sort
a
of grand
666 birthmark. So he's not just a devil worshiper, but he seems to have been born. That confused me. Did you guys understand that? Why the priest himself has a 666 birthmark?
I thought it was a tattoo.
No, it says
I was under the impression it was like a brand or a tattoo.
I would think that as well, but there was a line about it being a birthmark.
But it was a birthmark, though.
Well, maybe you're born into it. Maybe you're raised into it, and he kind of decided, like, the heck with this. I don't want to go to hell. You guys are nuts. End of the world. That's crazy. That's where I keep all my stuff.
Well, and he when he dies, and when we meet the other great ally, when this really becomes a mystery thriller, Gregory Peck teams up with David Warner, who, by the way, is still alive. One of the guys, Darren, in the chat room pointed out. David Warner still lives, and David Warner plays a photojournalist who's, kind of just, he starts following Gregory Peck around as a political item, and then becomes kind of obsessed with the fact that every time he takes pictures of Patrick Troughton, the priest who keeps trying to talk to Gregory Peck, there's like this big slash in the pictures that's aimed towards Patrick Troughton. And I got to say, I was thrown off by all this because it took me a long time to trust David Warner. Because David Warner, first of all, he's playing photojournalist, but he quickly becomes basically just a guy who's involved in the mystery because he comes to believe that he's going to be killed himself. But he's David freaking Warner, so I'm thinking, oh, this is Jack the Ripper, this is, the evil Klingon from whichever movie that was.
He's also the bad guy he's the bad guy in Waxwork.
Right, right. Oh, and he's the bad guy in Tron, and basically, there's not a movie from the 80s and early 90s that doesn't have David Warner plotting plotting the hero's demise. So here he is as just basically an aging hippie reporter who is worried about some bad juju. And that's awesome because you've got this working class reporter and the suave Gregory Peck globetrotting investigating this thing. And I wanted this to be a miniseries with 2 or 3 episodes of just the adventures of David Warner and Gregory Peck.
Darren disagrees that Warner was the bad Klingon in Trek, he says.
He wasn't the bad Klingon? He was never a bad Klingon?
I don't know. Darren says no.
Now,
he was a bad guy in one of the Star Treks.
He was a bad Cardassian on Next Generation, but I'm pretty sure that he was at least one bad. Maybe he was a good Klingon in one of the movies, but I know he was a Klingon in a movie. So we'll do some research and figure that out. Darren says he was the Klingon ambassador in the undiscovered country, who was assassinated, of course, by the spies.
So you've given him a terrible reputation as a bad guy, and in fact, not so much.
He plays a lot, but wasn't he the voice of the Scarecrow on Batman the Animated Series?
I'm not sure, but once again, he was Jack the Ripper, within just a few years of this movie. And
that's for time after time.
Boy, he was great as Jack the Ripper. He was fantastic. Do you remember that, where he's there with the TV, the TV clicker, and he's changing, and he goes, "Don't you understand? This is my time," and it's wonderful. And so, anyway, I did not trust this guy, and I was.
Then he's got the. So they're at the room of the priest, and they're looking at all the crosses everywhere, and all the articles about the ambassador and his diary about the ambassador. And he's like, this dude is bad news, this kid is bad news or whatever. And he's like, well, this is my problem. And he says, no, it's my problem because I got a picture of myself in the reflection. Although, by the way, the picture does not actually look like he's taking a picture of himself or whatever. And he's like, in the reflection my reflection in the mirror, here's this, slash across my throat. So I guess I'm like, on Earth, I don't help you. So let's go to Israel and find this guy that the priest told you to go find so that you can figure out how to kill your kid the right way.
So
we an adventure.
There's 3 stops, and we can go to any of them if there's something that you guys want to talk about here. But they go back to Rome to find the original priest that slipped that slipped Gregory Peck, the substitute kid. That priest leads them to leads them to this insane haunted
cemetery.
Graveyard of that druidic graveyard. That I don't even completely remember, what the historic significance of this graveyard was, other than that it was one of the most creeptastic graveyards I've ever seen. And that in turn.
And by the way, we need to mention that priest is completely mute, is half burned, is can't use one of his hands, right hand or left hand, and and then they said that he's serving a penance because he was because of his having fallen from grace and abandoned Christ or whatever. So that's this
whole sequence of the film is about Gregory Peck basically just amassing the evidence that Damien is the son of Satan. And all the while, Lee Remick is back in the hospital because along the way, Damien has accidentally, on purpose, whatever, knocked Lee Remick over a balcony.
I think that's pretty clearly on purpose.
Actually, you know what I think it was? I feel like it was the nanny on purpose and the kid in
callous disregard
autopilot,
would be the word.
The
kid has callous disregard. The nanny does it on purpose. Is the way
I don't know about that. I think my read. And admittedly, again, I've never seen any of the sequels. My read of Damien in this movie has always been that Damien has adult intelligence and is consciously, just born bad, and is kind of directing all these murders essentially. And
think what that would be.
He's very, very good at faking being a kid.
He's definitely got that evil in him, but I'm saying that I almost feel like it's almost like he's got 2 personalities. Like he's got his regular kid personality, and then suddenly he kind of channels the demon part of himself.
Snaps into Antichrist mode.
because I think it's one of those things where he's kind of realizing his powers, right? Like each new thing is like, oh, okay, and then he gets these glimmers. It appears like that's the other thing about this versus the new one. This isn't like the kid when he's a kid is still like, oh look, he's a kid.
Yeah.
And casting for the new one, it's like he's always evil. Like he never turns off the evil look, or like a glowering like.
It's very haunting
like,
the way, you know.
Really?
Damien, in the chat room, Damien from the chat room brings up, not to be confused with Damien the child, says, no, the kid's aware because he freaks out when he goes to the church. But here's the thing, I kind of feel like he's just coming into it, you know, and just like somebody turning into a vampire.
No, I really don't know. Like there's like even with the scene where he off Patrick Troughton, like you have the lightning coming back, and the next thing you see of Damien, you know, he's going pow 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 pow, and my read of that has always been that's him controlling lightning. You know, he's in full capacity from
maybe,
day
but then
one.
The thing is, if he were in full capacity, then he wouldn't be so troubled by the problem with his own frail body, which is that he sleeps like a 5-year-old.
Still a child.
Right, he sleeps like a 5-year-old, so that Gregory Peck is able to pick him up and cut off pieces of his hair and stuff like that. And let me tell you, a 5-year-old sleeps like the dead. And this kid, if he were a full-on demon, I don't think you'd be able to like toss him around like this.
I mean, compare Damien to Linda Blair in The Exorcist. I mean, that's not, you know, that's where you're full-on demon all the time. You know, this kid just has that glimmer of evil that's just kind of
he's not just a demon, though. He's the Antichrist. I mean, it's I don't know.
No, I disagree with you, Drew. Like, my thing is he's learning. Like any
he's learning.
Superhero or supervillain. Like he's slowly getting it.
Junior.
But there's enough points where he is still a kid. If he was a full-on demon, I think it'd be a lot more like a Twilight Zone episode where the kid can just do anything and, you know.
Right, and he would be because he's little.
Like
well, the thing is, like this idea that he's hiding so he could rise in politics, that would presume that he's got the intelligence, but I don't think he has super intelligence. I think that he's just that the intelligent design of the Antichrist is such that he's just getting it a little by little.
I mean, you know, this is while he's still 5.
They've never had any episodes with him. It's not until he's 5 that they even start to have issues. They have that adorable childhood with all the cute pictures in it up until that point.
Right. There's still a second and a third movie, so bear in mind we're debating right now the angels on the head of a pin. Like at what point does Damien lose his humanness? And I think it's real soon.
He has a human side because he is essentially Bizarro Christ. Okay.
Yeah. No, that's true.
And he has limitations. I'm not saying he doesn't. You know, he's not omnipotent, but I'm saying he is. You know, this kid does not have he may have human qualities, but this kid does not have a good side. You know, like last week we debated whether or not you could redeem Rosemary's Baby. You know, and kind of have like the Hellboy situation. Mm-hmm. That is obviously not an option for Damien Bourne. He's just he's a bad guy, you know, even at 5.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. All right. Oh, by the way, the scene in the graveyard. What I love about that graveyard scene is it's so Hollywood, isn't it beautiful? I mean, right down to opening up the graves.
Like the graveyard itself felt very Hammer movie.
Yeah, and the first time I saw it, not so much the second. The first time I saw it, it felt very, very fake. In fact, it felt like extraordinarily. I bet it doesn't hold up all that well in extremely high def, because it felt very much like a set. But you know, I don't know. It might be a practical graveyard. I don't think so. I think this is
it's very Hammer horror.
Yeah, but it's lovely, isn't it? I mean, isn't it like the most beautiful Hollywood? I mean, don't you just want like a little McFarlane toy model of this graveyard set?
Well, and then they open the grave, and it's the skeleton of the jackal, just like the priest had said that the mother would be the jackal. But then, you know, the journalist wants to leave, Aunt David, I was going to say Charlie, wants to leave, and they, Gregory Peck says, no, I want to open the other one in case that was an animal too, then maybe my child's still out there somewhere. And then he opens it and he says he was murdered because there's a gash in the skull. And I don't know why, but until that moment it had not occurred to me that they murdered the baby. I just assumed that the baby actually had died in childbirth. Maybe a supernatural thing had happened. But it never
hadn't dawned on me either.
Evil Satanists had actually murdered the baby in order to swap them out.
As part of a grand conspiracy to move him into politics. But that was a really
horrible part. I mean, it was really sad.
It is quite sad. And Gregory Peck has to, as with a couple other scenes, I think this is a very well-written movie, but there are a couple scenes where the whole thing has to, turn on a dime and give you a lot of information really quick. Gregory Peck has to sort of sell, I'm interested in finding out if my kid is out there. No, they murdered him, you bastards. And then, continue on his way. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but there are a couple of scenes where there's a little bit of really quick turn awkwardness.
Well, by the way, just go away. You got attacked by a crazy pack of dogs.
Well, that's right. That's true.
It's not just like he's like, well, now we got to go. It's like, okay, something's up here. Like, where does a pack of Rottweilers come from?
Yes.
And, that's freaking horrifying.
Once again, let's imagine.
It's not as good in the new one. Like, it's very action-y movie shot, like almost like Jason Bourne kind of thing. Like, it's all shaky. And it's not as horrifying. It doesn't even last as long. Because, man, they are savage. Now, I'm surprised that they survive it. Considering the way dog attacks usually go. And that was a particularly brutal, terrible one. But
it says even the stunt guy was really injured in that because the dogs were so crazy.
That is scary as hell. Like, those things that is mean. I mean, there's a reason why they, people have them as guard dogs.
Yeah, those are some powerful dogs. And once again, let's review Satan Incorporated. Like, what kind of money these guys must be laying down and what kind of people they must have on staff, because they've got to have somebody, some demon person out there who does nothing but raise the dogs and train them and send them out and probably has them
back. I just assumed these were almost like hellhounds.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even think they're normal dogs.
Yeah. They're
I guess.
A bunch of them around. There's not like a dog.
You're trying to turn this into a James Bond movie, Jason.
In my mind, yes, they're just heavily organized, and they're like, can somebody, hey, James, can you do me a favor and send 7 dogs to Greece?
No.
I need them there by morning.
So let's fast forward a little because we've run out of time pretty much.
Absolutely.
So
okay.
He finds out at this point, he calls his wife and tells her to get the hell out of there, and meanwhile, as soon as he hangs up, Nanny from hell, Mary Poppins from hell, shows up, pushes her out a window of the hospital, and kills her. So that's kind of horrifying. And by then, Jason goes, they should have fired her. And I'm like, because that would have stopped her from murdering the mom in the hospital.
Well, again, back to the Abraham thing, at the way you decide that it's time to kill your son is at the point where your
son's nanny kills your wife?
Yeah.
Right.
And you're like, my wife's dead? All right. Because he's reluctant, and he's like, wait, somebody killed who? All right. Sorry, kid. This is it.
Well, he's still not willing to do it. It's not until David Warner's head takes a dancing skating rink move across that sheet of glass. We've got to describe this. This is just amazing. Who wants to describe the bouncing head of David Warner and how exactly this plays out?
He sees that there's a slash across his neck. And, previously he's seen something with the priest, and then priest gets impaled, which, by the way, when I watched that, I was like, oh, man, I didn't realize it reminded me of Hot Fuzz, which I'm sure was informed by this. I don't know if they, I haven't read and seen if that's what they were going for, but it definitely feels kind of very similar, even the graveyard setting. Anyway, so he knows bad things keep happening to people who have these marks. So Gregory Peck throws the daggers, right? That's supposed to kill him. He's like, no, I'll do it. And so when he goes, there's construction happening. The guy gets out of the truck and knocks the truck into neutral, basically. It rolls back, which in turn lets loose a sheet of glass, which just goes and just cuts his head right off. Which, by the way, if you have the right magazine or novel, you can look at that picture as much as you want of David him losing his head, which is just crazy. But,
and the head just goes bunk, 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 and it takes like
there, and everybody's like, ah, which is the appropriate response to that. That's scarring right there. I mean, of all the things that's that happen, that's that's definitely one of the.
And then it's a madcap race to the end, because that's pretty much at that point they're like, okay, we got to wrap this up, because Gregory Peck goes, headless Dave Warner, all right, I'm leaving, I'm getting the knives, I'm gonna go, and he heads right to him. Boom, he goes in the house, he lures the dog in a bunch of tensest scene as it gets, lures the dog down into the cellar. Boom,
awesome.
He has one final fight with Crazy Nanny.
It was like totally goes. I mean, she was like, up until that point, she has been such the composed, just evil nanny. And here she's just crazy. I mean, she's got her hair's down, she's got her nightgown on, and she's screaming and jumping on him and pounding him, and she's really defending the
I loved her sort of green silk pajamas. They were actually they were cool.
Of course, the dad has to confirm that he is the Antichrist by finding the 666 birthmark on his scalp. So that's the scene where you were talking about where the kid's totally asleep. And
one more bit there where he does that, fights with the nanny. He grabs the kid and now is going to race to, because he's been told they have to do this on hallowed ground. He throws the kid in the back seat, and they're going to race to a church for him to
he doesn't really think
sacrifice
this one
the kid.
He doesn't think it through about avoiding being chased by cops and what have you. He just goes.
Well, he's kind of, driven by anger at this point. I mean, they've, he's been offing people left and right around him, including his wife. I don't think he's thinking very clearly.
Crazed is a fair way to put it. So, and as we said in the synopsis at the beginning, he gets to the church, he's about to stab Damien, and blam, cops kill him because they don't want to see him to commit murder. And
then they have this lovely full funeral of with the full what do you call it, the
honors.
What do you call it when you have the military honor guard? The honor guard. Yeah. And I was just like, really? Honor guard for the ambassador who was about to stab his kid in the church? It just seems like
politics covers everything.
Rug.
Huh?
More than likely they would sweep that under the rug if possible.
Yeah, it's
exactly. Exactly. He's dead anyway. They're both dead. So, and the child apparently, I guess this guy had such a great relationship with the president or whatever that now the child appears to have been maneuvered into being adopted, or at least watched for now. He's hanging out with the family of the president of the United States. And little Damien...
he turns, so at the end, you see that the president and the first lady are holding the child's hand at the funeral. He turns around, looks at the camera, with a serious look, and then this evil grin crosses his face.
Right.
And it's just so chilling.
Apparently that grin was like a happy accident, because he said that I was watching one of the features, and Richard Donner was saying that he's trying to keep the kid from laughing.
Yeah.
And it just kind of turned into this maniacal grin.
Well,
because he just wanted him to have a serious...
The way to interpret it on IMDb is that it's reverse psychology, where he tells him, "Don't you laugh. If you laugh, I won't be your friend." And so the kid just kind of grins, But it's creepy.
So by the way, also in the new one, in the new one they say something about, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't write it down. They say something about Liev Schreiber's character being like the godson of the president, something like that, and so that's one. Because he's a little younger in that. But in the new movie, at the chase scene, in the old one, it's just Gregory Peck just trying to haul ass to get there, right? He's, in the new one, all of a sudden, he's like a James Bond level, driver. He's maneuvering this, and he's drifting out, and all this stuff, and you're like, when did he become a Secret Service agent? An ambassador? It's just crazy, all this crazy crap happening. He's got a, badass car and everything, and you're just like, what? Also, the visceral nature of, the nanny attacking him, and she attacks him twice in the original. He ends up hitting her with a car instead. it doesn't have the magic.
Isn't it Mia Farrow? Farrow in the remake playing the nanny?
Yes, she is, and
that's kind of funny.
Creepy, but again, and also she doesn't throw the wife out. She gives her an embolism, which is much more cold. Again, the whole movie, the new one, is very, very cold. There's a lot of great movies. It's filmed really well. It's not terrible. It's just not the same. Gregory Peck is really warm. He's a family man. All this stuff. And none of that. It's one of those things where you watch. It's another one of those movies where you watch the remake and you go, I understand that you can't just do it shot for shot, right?
Right.
But how could you miss? Why didn't you see what made the first one good? What made it a classic? Why 30 years later we're remaking it? Why it's stuck in our pop culture?
Right.
What didn't you get about that? Why did you make this old? The scenes that you did make different. Why those? For example, when the priest confronts him, he just is in the embassy. Whereas in the new one, whereas in the old one in '76, he comes in and hey, I locked the door. You have to see me. He's there. He's a trespasser.
Yes.
It's not just hey man, can I talk to you in the lobby? It's he keeps calling the guards, and they can't really get in at first. It's just it's a bunch of touches like that where I really I'm wow, and the chemistry. Gregory Peck is such a good. He wants to be a good dad.
Right, and again with the dignity. I mean, although I really like Liev Schreiber, and I think he's capable of a great deal of dignity.
No. He's a good actor, but his relationship with his wife seems to me very cold in the remake, and maybe Damien's right. Maybe we shouldn't be discussing it, but I thought it was a really interesting contrast. It pains me because I still think nobody sets out to make a bad movie, right? Nobody, or very few. I would say maybe 10%.
But I would go so far as to say, Tony, that what happens is, and then I want to get people's final thoughts on this, but what I think honestly happens is that all they've really got is the title. Is they'll say, hey, Tony, I need you to write The Omen, and Tony's like, well, I don't actually, not you per se, but well, I don't know, I may have seen it once. It doesn't matter. It's people recognize the name, so go write a new version of The Omen. And so you write it, but you don't have, you're not a student of it. You don't have this idea of whatever it was that Richard Donner was trying to do. And so maybe you capture it and maybe you don't. And sometimes a remake is great, because they capture something amazing, like The Untouchables, right? Brian De Palma does amazing stuff. Although I don't think that Brian De Palma set out to recapture anything. I think it was just lucky. Sometimes they go, well, because I really think it's just the freaking title. I think they'll go, we're going to do The Omen. People remember The Omen, and we're going to do The Untouchables because people remember The Untouchables.
And it's
Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible, that'll work.
Right, it's usually a string of events. It's not let's blame the writer. Let's blame the director. It's a bunch of stuff because that's, you and I both know how that works. I mean,
oh my God, yes. Yeah, no, absolutely.
We've written screenplays, we've written comics, there's editors, all of that. But, it's really a lot of people go, who wrote this crap? And it's well, how do you know that guy, that wasn't the fifth rewrite?
Writing is just the beginning of it, right? And there's rewriting, and there's who got credit for the script, how many people actually, and then there's shooting, and there's editing, and there's person dies halfway through filming, and they have to erase part of his part, and I'm thinking of was it Halloween 5 or 6? I can't remember. They had to be all chopped up because Donald Pleasance died.
Yeah.
And a million things go wrong. And we've talked about this. How you'll answer questions in the press, like, oh, well, why did this happen? And you go, well, we thought it'd be really good if people just used their imagination. When the actual answer is, we ran out of time. We didn't have time to do that. We wanted to do that, but it got cut or it got ruined, or there's the real answer is always so stupid. But it also makes you aware of how lucky it is if anything good ever happens.
But at the end of the day, working in comics where I've had comics that, working in comics and in games where games just get killed and, stuff happens and, I have a level in a game that sucks because because we wouldn't cut it because the league designer wouldn't cut it or whatever. And,
right.
But at the end of the day, the part that sucks is the fans and the people, the audience. It doesn't matter what happened, right? If you don't come away with being entertained by that piece of hopeful entertainment, it doesn't really matter. But you can still be sad as the screenwriter or the animator or the whoever creator on that you're like, I certainly didn't want critics to say that.
It's also what separates fans from regular moviegoers. Is a fan is a person who will watch a movie and you come out and the regular moviegoer, if it's a bad movie, and go, well, that wasn't very good. And the fan will go, well, you should have read the first draft. And they're basically off living their own movie, which, by the way, apparently is a way to great happiness. So, I mean, we can end up liking a lot more things.
Sure.
We should wrap up and go with our final thoughts. And also, since we're running short on time, we should throw in our endorsements wrapped up with our final thoughts. And my final thoughts will be very short. Let me throw out mine first, just to get them out of the way. You should totally see The Omen because this is a gorgeous movie, and so if 20th Century Fox will figure out a way for you to get around to seeing it, then you should totally find it and see it. That's me.
By the way.
I recommend The Omen. Okay. Who do we start with? We started with Julia.
Julia.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I think I've said everything that I had to say. I think it's I'm finding that you guys have really made me more comfortable with like scary movies, so that they don't seem as scary anymore that I used to. I used to think that things were really scary, and I'm like, this isn't as scary as I remember. It is scary, but it's not as scary as I remember it being. But it's definitely chilling, and it gives you some things to think about. My endorsement is Brave. If you haven't seen Brave yet, go see Brave. If you like stories about evil possessions of people, there's one of those in there for you, but mostly it's sweet. But there's a
and it's good. And it's tear-jerking. No, I loved Brave. I don't even remember what order we went in, so Mr. Drew, it was that order. Final thoughts and endorsements.
Great movie. As I was saying earlier, I think it is my favorite of the. Not that I like The Exorcist, and I really like Rosemary's Baby, but I love The Omen. So if you haven't seen The Omen, go see it. My endorsement is kind of threefold this week. My non-selfish endorsement is something I picked up from Half Price Books. It's Honor Among Punks, the complete Baker Street graphic novel. It's kind of continuing my Sherlock Holmes theme of endorsements. So this is a comic book by Guy Davis and Gary Reed. It is an alternate universe, present day, but the Victorian society has survived into present day, and you have this Sherlock Holmes stand-in who is a middle-aged punk rock lesbian, and other than the obvious Sherlock Holmes aspect of it, I also really enjoyed it because it made me think about how, like, the punk, because I'm getting to the point where, there's somebody involved with punk rock. I'm kind of an older guy because I'm my almost my mid-30s now, and punk rock, it seems like to me, is sort of to become kind of a macho, dick-waving thing, and it didn't really used to be that way. And this the way that, even though this is like an alternate reality fantasy kind of thing, the way it's sort of portrayed, it made me, think about the way things used to be. My other endorsement is for more of a shout out. It's for the Fellowship of the Geek website, which I was at Strip, the Dallas Webcomics Expo, over the weekend, and they were my neighbors, and I got to talking to them. They were very nice. They actually did a 3-part little video interview with me, and I was checking out their site, and it's pretty cool. So it's nice to see other people that do podcasting and similar to what we do in here. The final part of my endorsement, when I swear I'll shut up after this, go to Indie Planet. Order Halloween Man graphic novels. I have them there. Buy them. They're good. Trust me.
They really are very good. I've really loved Halloween Man, so I endorse that endorsement. Tony, final thoughts, The Omen, and do you have any endorsements for us?
Yeah, I still like The Omen. See the 76 one. For scholarly purposes only, see the 2006 one if you really want to compare and contrast. But the 76 one, there's a reason why it's a classic. I mean, I kept looking at all the bits. They're just fantastic. Even the parts that aren't super great work. And it still holds up. My endorsement this week is actually the Draft House. I saw this movie, and Lars from the Draft House rarely does me wrong on anything. So he highly recommends this 1981 movie, Possession, with Isabella Gianni and Sam Neill. And while it's one of his favorite movies, I'm not sure if it's my favorite movie, but it is an experience. In the same way that a lot of Weird Wednesdays are an experience, Sam Neill is just insane in this movie. And in fact, somebody tweeted, like, this movie sucks. And Sam Neill's usually a badass. Which, the whole movie, I'm thinking, yeah, if you're a Sam Neill fan for, like, Jurassic Park Sam Neill, that's not this movie.
Wait, now, which one is that called again?
Called Possession. It was done in 1981, and the Draft House has 2 more screenings of it. Isabella Gianni is in it, and she gives one of the most insane freakouts I've ever seen. I do not think any American actress particularly, especially one who's as beautiful as her, would ever do that role in that movie. I mean, it is crazy town, and there's all kinds of just bizarre insanity. Possession's like the Clive Barker Books of Blood.
Is that the one that includes the line, reality is not what it used to be? Or was that In the Mouth of Madness? There's a cut version. We saw the uncut one. But yeah, if anybody's in Austin and you want a film experience, I mean, it was very divisive. The crowd, when leaving yesterday night, was very quiet, and nobody really kind of wanted to make eye contact. Wow.
Something's happened. But let me tell you, intensity and raw, just like, holy crap, what the hell is going on? That movie has that in spades. And like I said, it's like a Clive Barker movie that Clive Barker didn't make. I mean,
interesting.
It's crazy how like the Books of Blood, to me anyway. I mean, other people may have, other theories. But if you're in Austin and you hear this and you're looking for a cinema experience, I don't think very many theaters are going to show this, if ever. In fact, they had to do some kind of some legwork to actually get this print. So it's
wow. Well, that's a fantastic endorsement.
Wow. It's still one of those things where now I thought of like 3 different comic book stories or scripts that I might want to springboard off of that, whether they're in that universe or not, just because of how insane it is. But it deals with lots of stuff, and if possible, you should hunt for the uncut version. I forgot who made it. You have to look it up. Maybe I'll try to post it on.
Well, we can post it on the Facebook page, and that's
the Facebook page.
Yeah.
As well as the times that it's showing at the Draft House. Again, if you hate it, don't blame me, because it's a very, very divisive movie. Only at Weird Wednesdays have I really seen a crowd who just kind of like shuffles out and kind of is talking to each other just barely.
Well, I remember them being really put off by Teenage Mother, but that was because even after all the head crushing and stuff in Haute Tension, for some reason, a live birth with an episiotomy just freaked them out, and they were like,
"Oh, I've seen
no."
You missed the one button number time where things really were like, somebody showed a short that was truly like, why is this happening during the breakfast run?
Wow. Wow.
But this movie is not like that. But it is an experience. At least, like I said, it's gonna. But it's a very very polarizing movie. Let's put it that way.
All right. Well, very good. I got one more thing I want to mention, which is we do have a Facebook page, which is if you go to castledraculapodcast.com, it'll take you to our Facebook page, or you can go to facebook.com/castledraculapodcast and leave comments. And we'd love for you to listen on iTunes and leave reviews on iTunes and tell other people to listen, because we want to keep growing this podcast every week. And I'm so thankful. I'm thankful that we had guests in the chat room today,
for real.
throwing questions at us.
Awesome.
Just very, very awesome, and I'm so excited. So we'll be back next week, and everybody have a fantastic week in the meantime. So take care, guys.
Rock on.
Night.
Night.
Night.